Who agrees with me that we as Muslims around the world, in this very moment, and for a very long time, are getting hammered? Yeah? There used to be a time wherever the Muslims were, there was success, there was organization, the people were flourishing, businesses were flourishing, inventions came about, and the golden era or the golden ages were solely because of the Muslims. Now wherever there's Muslims, there's oppression, there's dishonor, there's bloodshed, there's all sorts of things that are happening. And there's so many reasons behind that, so many reasons. So we could leave tonight in a negative, having a negative thought towards it and be like, oh yeah, but there's so many other things that aid to this. I understand there's so many other things. And the reason why I want to do this introduction before we get into the activity, so that you and I both know the intentions behind this. I understand that there's so many other things that come to play into why the Muslims are treated and why the Muslims are right now at the lowest of the barrel. I understand that. But there's one particular thing that we are going to talk about tonight that has the ability to change the dynamics of the Muslims. Who's got an idea what that might be? Anyone got an idea? What's the topic? It's like the flyers. If you've seen the flyer, it's all there. Hey? Money, finances, money, yeah. The Prophet ﷺ said, الْيَدُ الْعُلْيَا خَيْرٌ مِّنَ الْيَدِ السُّفْلَى. The Prophet of Allah said that the upper hand is better than the lower hand. The hand that gives is better than the hand that receives and takes. And in that same hadith, when they translated that hadith further down, they discuss that the Prophet ﷺ was once sitting with his companions. And the Prophet ﷺ always used every opportunity to teach his companions. Correct? Every opportunity the Prophet ﷺ had, he would do something to try and teach his companions, because basically they were fresh into the deen. And he was the one that they were all looking towards to try and understand what the deen is about. So, there was one moment where the Prophet ﷺ was sitting with his companions. And then he said to them, أَلَا تُبَايِعُونَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ? Do you not pledge your allegiance to Rasulullah? And they were confused because they were like, had just recently pledged their allegiance. They had just recently given their bay'ah to the Prophet ﷺ. So they're like, we have done so, Ya Rasulullah. And then he continued to say, أَلَا تُبَايِعُونَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ? Do you not give your pledge of allegiance to Rasulullah? Again, confused. The Prophet ﷺ said it 3 times. And in the end they said to him, like, what are we pledging allegiance to? We've already done it. What is it that we're pledging our allegiance to? So then the Prophet ﷺ continued to say that you do not ascribe partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and send blessings on the Prophet ﷺ and so on. But there's one particular thing that he mentioned in there, teaching his companions. One particular point that the Prophet of Allah ﷺ mentioned, teaching his companions. And understand that when these ahadith or when these events or these narrations reach us, they're a learning point for you and I. There's something for you and I to listen, read and understand and take heed from. And adopt that into our lives. And there's one particular thing that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in this moment where he asked his companions to pledge allegiance. Is that, and pledge allegiance, I mean to take an oath. Show me your loyalty. Be a man of your word in what you're about to pledge allegiance to. And pledge allegiance that you will not seek help from others. Pledge allegiance that you will not be a beggar. Pledge allegiance that you will not be an individual asking others because you are lower than them and they are above you. You're the lower hand and they are the upper hand. So much so that the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned that an individual who begs for wealth or monetary items or money or begs for something, when he has enough to suffice him or her, then they best ask or they best beg for hot coals, the hot coals of Jahannam. Very important, extremely important. Now, we all know that, and we can go into hours of discussion. الْمَالُ وَالْبَنُونَ زِينَةُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. And then we know that the zuhd, the idea of zuhd, the idea of distancing yourself and separating yourself from materialistic things and the dunya. We all know and understand these things. But there is a very big difference. And we know that money is an illusion. If we were to go and have a lecture about the world economics, we will go days in discussing this. And where it started from and where it became and how it ended where it is and why things are happening and why they're doing and what funds what and the reasons that they do things so that they can fund it. It's like a big web, massive web. And we all know that money is an illusion. But that does not make it any less important than what it is, if you know what you are using it for. We all know that the Muslim should not strive for luxury or should not strive, work towards living a materialistic life. But that does not mean that money is not important. Because what you have is two extremes of people. You have an individual that says, I want nothing to do with the dunya and money. So then they stay home and they do nothing about it. And they remain living in their very basic and simple life. And then they have left not even the tiniest footprint behind them, or they have not even left their fingerprint or a stamp on anything. And then they live and they die and they're gone and they're forgotten and they've done nothing. And there's the Muslim that their entire focus is money and greed and money, money, money. And then they forget Islam and they forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then they forget their purpose on this earth. And then in between there's this rare gem of a Muslim. In between there is a rare gem of a Muslim, very hard to find. And if you are either extreme, if you are an individual who likes to do nothing, or if you're an individual whose entire focus is on achieving money and only money, when both of these people see this rare gem of an individual, both of them are inclined towards that person. Who can tell me what the characteristics of that rare gem is? Anyone? Any idea? Any idea? The rare gem, hard to find, and if you find them, you hold on to them with everything because they're the ones that are moving things, is the Muslim that's focused on trying to increase in their finances, but for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For the sake of aiding towards the deen. And then you find these people that they give with everything that they have. And you find these people, things move because of them. I'm not going to mention where this place is or who these people are. But there's a place, a very, very famous, very, very famous center, okay, or masjid. And obviously, we all know the reason of their existence is because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does things through people. And if you're an individual that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen to do things through you, then know that you're a special type of individual. There's this famous place, an organization, that it is where it is now because of one couple, a husband and wife. that donated $1 million towards the establishment of this organization and wanted nothing back. A couple, husband and wife, donated $1 million towards the establishment of this place and don't even want to be mentioned. I mean, they're not even mentioned who they are. These are the rare gems. Where did you think these people get these $1 million from? From sitting at home? From doing nothing? From not trying to achieve these worldly goals? And without these people, how will you have these establishments? Or how will you have these movements? And if that was the case, if it was the case that every single one of us needs to live this poor lifestyle, and every single one of us needs to forget about attaining, monetary finances or whatever it may be, if that was the case, then you wouldn't have battles that were funded in the time of the Prophet ﷺ entirely through a few Sahaba. The Prophet ﷺ, when he would prepare for an expedition or a battle, what will he do? Who could tell me what he will do? What is a call that the Prophet ﷺ would make before going out for an expedition or a battle? Anyone? Any ideas? Nothing comes to your mind? Yes. He would ask, who's willing to prepare the army? And he would call upon specific individuals that if they were willing to prepare their battalions and their armies to go out into war. Now, if it so happened to be, because this ideology is not from Islam, this ideology of living a poor lifestyle is not from Islam. If it so happened to be that this ideology was from Islam, then why would the Prophet ﷺ call upon his Sahaba to prepare an entire army? And then we know the stories of the Sahaba that would come. And do you know why they would come in the fashion that they came? Like Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, once the Prophet ﷺ asked who's ready to prepare the army, and Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu found this opportunity and he came rushing to the Prophet ﷺ, so happy because this was his moment to outshine Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So then he came with the biggest smile on his face, and the Prophet ﷺ said to him, "Oh Umar, what do you bring?" And he said, "Ya Rasulullah, I bring half of my wealth for you, Ya Rasulullah." And then he said, "Oh Umar, what have you left behind?" And then he said, "I left half of my wealth behind for my family." Prophet ﷺ encouraging his actions and happy for his actions. And then Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala comes in and he says, "Ya Abu Bakr, what do you bring?" And he said, "Ya Rasulullah, I bring all of my wealth for you, Ya Rasulullah." And he said, "Abu Bakr, what have you left behind?" "Taraktu Allah wa Rasulah." I left Allah and His Prophet behind for my family. Now, if it so happened to be that money was not a thing, then the Prophet ﷺ would have told them, okay, look, maybe, did he tell them at any stage, okay, this time we're going to take your money, but next time you better not have any money on you. Next time you better be poor. The next time I ask you, you better be poor. No. He did not say that at any time. And in fact, we know Abu Dharr, he had an entire date farm, massive date farm, all that belonged to him. And then the ayah was revealed, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ, that you will not achieve righteousness until you give what you love most. When he heard this ayah, he came to the Prophet of Allah ﷺ and he told him, "Ya Rasulullah, I heard this ayah. And you know how much I love my date farm, massive date farm. And he loved that date farm so much. One of the reasons he loved it is because he would see the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ, they would cross through his farm on the way when they were traveling on the way through wherever they were going, and they would wash from the water in his farm and from his date trees. So he loved the fact that he had the ability to give to the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba. But he said, when I heard this ayah, I bring to you, Ya Rasulullah, my entire date farm. But these people, do you ever ask the question, because you try and understand what's the psychology behind these people and how they give so much. And we all know the ayat in the Quran, and we all know that, if you were to return after your death, if you were to return to the dunya, then the one thing that you would ask is to return so that you can give sadaqah, give in charity. We all know these ayat. But still, despite all of these ayat in the Quran and all of the ahadith, do you find people around giving up everything? Do you find that? Do you know anyone around that has given up everything, absolutely everything that they own, in the same fashion that the Sahaba used to do? You don't really see this. So you try and understand the psychology behind the Sahaba and why they would do such a thing. Yes, their iman is much greater than you and I. They lived with the Prophet ﷺ. They seen things firsthand. Surely they understand that. But the other reason behind that is because they knew very well that they would go out again tomorrow, the next day, to rebuild what they have given. They weren't just going to leave it as is. They would go out the next day and continue in trade and rebuild what they have given. And they believed in the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا, that there is not a beast on this earth except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has its sustenance. They had tawakkul and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to provide for us. And they knew very well that money or wealth is needed to move things. They knew very well that wealth is needed to move the mission of the Prophet ﷺ. Even way before the Sahaba. Who can tell me who knew very well that wealth was needed to move the mission of the Prophet ﷺ? Way before the Sahaba. Who could tell me? Way before anyone had reverted to Islam. Any idea? Khadija, mashallah, very good. The wife of the Prophet ﷺ. Did the Prophet in any of those moments say to his wife, no, stop. We shouldn't be trying to, this trade and this business, and we should at any moment tell her, because he knew and they knew the same way that all of these 2.7 billion Muslims today just so happen to not know, but they knew that money was needed to move the mission of the Prophet ﷺ. But today, we're oblivious to this. All of the Muslims around, and you only find a handful that understand that money is needed to move things. And only a handful that understand that money is the upper hand. And only a handful that understand that despite everything that we do, if we don't move together, collectively, not individually, not being greedy, because the Prophet ﷺ feared that for us, that he feared greed for us, and that we will compete in dunya matters. Not being greedy, or not trying to compete in these dunya matters for the sake of dunya, but collectively to try and achieve greatness for the ummah. Only then you will see change. Only then we will see true change. And only then you will realize, now this oppression that's befalling the Muslims, it's not like it was back in the days, It's not a knife and sword, a sword and shield, a knife to knife, a sword fight. It's not a sword fight. Because you see exactly, as much as the Muslims try and defend themselves, just with the press of a button, from the comfort of this office, they send a drone and they blow up an entire block. An entire block decimated from within the comfort of their homes. Is this a fair fight? Is this a fair fight? It's not a fair fight. That's not like it was. This is not a sword fight. This is not an equal fight. But the problem is that the Muslims think that that's where the fight is. Little do you realize, or little do we realize, that the fight is in the money. The fight is in the upper hand. Because no one from the Muslims has the ability to sit in the comfort of their office and press a button the way they do, and dishonor and destroy us, and then we're left with nothing. We are playing a game. It's like you're playing a game with someone. You know, it's like you're playing a game of basketball with someone, but you're using soccer tactics. The game is basketball. They're dribbling, they're shooting in the hoop, but you're trying to kick the ball. We need to start playing basketball. A lot of people want to play basketball, I know this. We need to start playing basketball. We need to start playing their game. And their game is in achieving the upper hand. And in achieving the upper hand, it's through finances. And then when the Muslim Ummah collectively have this concept of moving money amongst each other, through each other, and growing each other, not against each other, growing each other, only then will we have the ability to see the Muslims out of the oppression that they're in.